Alright guys, Wagon Junkie here. We're going to start calling these episodes Wagon Junkie Garage. So anyway, here's some of the basic tools that I'm going to be using. Here's my suspension system for the front. So it's a THUREN Overland system. I got both front and rear. This is just the front for today because we've got a lot of work to do and we got rain moving in. But I'm going to try to do a time-lapse along with instructional video. Already starting the overall process for what I need to do. So I've already got the wheels chalked. Let's see if I can get it to do it. Sorry, I can't see my phone very well. Okay, so I've already got my wheels chalked. I've already disengaged my sway. So those of you that are doing this for the first time, what you want to do is put it into 4 high, hit the sway disconnect, go back and forth a few times. It should engage the sway disconnect. And aside from that, enjoy the video. All right, so underneath, this is your basic setup. Springs are up in there, if I can get to it, on both sides. So like I said, the sway disconnect has already been engaged. They're supposedly, it's supposedly done. We'll see once I start jacking this up. You want to jack this up as high as possible. So use your diff as your center point to go ahead and jack up both wheels. Once you get it jacked up, you want to make sure that you put your jack stands underneath the actual frame itself. And I'll show the afters when I'm done with that portion of the process. Meanwhile, you're going to need a good lug wrench so that you can take the tires off. One of the key things to note too, as you're doing this process, when you get to the point where you're actually going to drop down your axle, you want to look at your brake line and make sure that once it starts to drop down that you're not going to have an issue where it's going to be too tight. If that's the case, then you're going to have to take off your calipers to alleviate that, because the Power Wagon articulates a lot. All right, guys, and like I said before, you want to make sure you chalk your wheels. So we've got wheel chocks here. These are 37-inch tires, so hopefully that stays in place, but I don't think I'm going to have any issues, to be honest with you. Aside from that, I'll be kind of learning as I go along with you guys. All right, talk to you in a bit. All right, guys, just real quick, I'm trying to get my time lapse to work and it keeps shutting off for some reason. So basically I'm getting it to a point where I need to jack this up as high as possible with the detachable sways. And you'll see over here, when I lower that jack, that rotor pretty much goes straight to the ground. So I'm trying to figure out a way to get this even higher. I mean, these things do articulate. If you've gone off-roading in them, now you can basically see these things are beasts. So more to come. I'm sorry, I've tried the time lapse, it's just not working, so I'm just going to kind of give you step by step as I'm going through this process. I am struggling, so you would have just seen my struggles anyway. Plus I'm rushing because of our weather that's supposed to move in pretty soon. So more to come. All right, junkies. So I've gone through, jacked it up, put my jack stands up on blocks to get it even higher. Hopefully that's high enough. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to remove the shock. And once I do that, this whole axle should drop down even more because it no longer has the shock to hold it. And with the detached sways, we'll see how far down this actually really ends up going. I'm hoping I got this jacked up enough. We shall see. More to come. Oh, and I'll show you. This thing is jacked up quite a bit. So, alright, more to come, my junkies. Hey junkies, I'm back. Alright, let me show you what I'm doing here. So, I've got everything all jacked up, done the way that I want it to. This shock, I've actually removed the bolt. Now, supposedly when I go to do this process and lower the jack, the coil spring should also be free once I'm done. I am not an expert, so but this is Wagon Junkie Garage, so we try shit on our own, see what works, what doesn't. So more to come, stay tuned. Okay, now. Alright guys, so technically everything should fall out, we'll see. Wish me luck. That should be it, I think. I want to make sure that the jack is underneath for all intents and purposes. That is your only lifeline in this. So I went and I had to, my other jack blew up and I had to rush over to a local hardware store, and needless to say, this jack sucks. Once I get this all done, I'm taking it back. Get me a Pro Eagle. God dang it. So bear with me as I struggle. Should be good right there. So that is out, and basically for this shock housing bolt that you can see here, that size there seems to be a 21 millimeter. Works really well for this. For the top, it seems to be a 19. So it's a little tight. Like I said, I'm a makeshift mechanic, so I do with whatever tools I have. But if I were to do this again, I would definitely advise some sort of an air ratchet process. So I'm going to go ahead and get this removed. Let's see. This, I'm going to lower down some more. I do have a coil compressor over in the case over there, and if I need to, I'll just use a little bit of a coil compressor on here. I do a lot of off-roading, so stuff may be set in just from the grit and dirt and whatever else is in there. So, alright, more to come. Thank you. Alright junkies, I'm back. So now, got the shock off. I'm doing the compressor on the shocks, and like I said, this is my first time doing this stuff. You just want to be careful. You want to go on both sides, do a few turns on each side, try to even it out as much as possible. On the wagons, the spring is kind of pushed forward a little bit, so it takes a little bit more getting used, getting everything lined up. doing what you need to do. And you just have to have patience on this part. You really can't rush it because you're dealing with a lot of pressure. Once you get this compressed enough to where you can pop it off. If I had the right conditions, I would have this on a hydraulic jack, and basically these coils would just pop right out. As I said before, there's a lot of grit and everything else all in between that. I'm going to clean off these boots once I get the current shocks out, or the springs out. I'm going to do that and then clean it all up, and then I'm going to add the compressors to the new springs, because the new springs are a lot bigger than these old ones, so I have to make a lot more room for them. So more to come, guys. Thank you. Alright guys, I'm back. So I got the coil out, removed, and that's what it looks like with it removed. Didn't have to compress it too much really, but the new springs are really hefty and a lot different than the old springs. They're a lot thicker. So I'm gonna have to do the same method, just in reverse. I'm gonna take these, let me show you. I got the compressors on here right now. I'm starting to tighten it up to kind of compress these springs, and then I'll slide them in, release the pressure, and the spring should be in place. So more to come. Alright guys, welcome back to Junkie Garage, Wagon Junkie Garage, that is. Just a couple of core things that happened yesterday or transpired. So had a bunch of weather move in as I was starting to do the disassembly work. Had to cut it short. What I decided to do though, I got it jacked up on both sides, and the reason for it is the right side, the passenger side, is going to droop way down, as you can see. So these wagons are made to articulate. I've already taken the coil spring out and the shock off of this one, but it makes it a lot easier if you jack it up on both sides and then you let it come all the way down. Now realistically, you want your wagon a lot higher as far as when you jack it up. My driveway is sloped, so it makes it a little bit more difficult, but I was still able to get the overall axle to drop low enough to where I could actually pull the spring out. I didn't have to use a compressor or anything like that. Let me show you the other side. So on this other side, I do have the new spring in, as you can see, and the shock system. The shock isn't connected because I wanted it to droop as low as possible, but all I'll have to do for the final assembly on this side is jack it up a little bit so that I can line up the hole for the shock and pop it right in. So that's pretty much it for the front end. I'm gonna put the spring on the other side, and as I showed you yesterday, I may have to use a little bit of the compressor units, but not as much as what I was trying to struggle to do yesterday. Everything slides right in when you have it jacked up on both. You're able to actually get the springs in and out, get the springs back in. You'll probably have to use a little bit of compression, but nothing like what I was trying to do yesterday. And what we do here on Junkie Garage is we try to learn as we go along. So it's been a real learning experience, but the back should be very easy. All I have to do is jack it up on the diff as high as I can, take the tires off. It should droop right down. Keep in mind that in the back you also have a shock for the differential in the back. It's like a shock stabilizer. Disconnect that, and you'll probably want to disconnect the sway in the back as well, so you get maximum amount of drop, and the springs should come right out. Alright, so after I get this all patched up and together, I'll show you the after product. More than likely by the time I finish this up, it'll be too dark to show you on camera, so I'll take a shot of it tomorrow with everything all in. Alright, till then, wagon on. Hi guys, welcome back to Wagon Junkie Garage. So yesterday I started doing this side, and weather moved in. So I had to cut my recording short, cut all my time short. But as you can see, today I got the spring in, I got the shock in. It's not connected right now. If I pan down, so right there, it's not connected in currently right now because I wanted the other side to articulate more. This sucker articulates a lot, and let me show you. So if you've been on the trails, you know that once you detach the sways, it really transitions a lot. And I'm here to tell you, this sucker does transition a lot. So, as you can see, the sway is completely disconnected. And even on that side, that axle dropped a lot lower than the driver's side. So this is the passenger side. So yeah, it droops down big time. So that being said, you pop the two tires off, you jack it up on the frame on both sides, pop the two tires off. Normally you'd want some sort of a hydraulic jack. I think that would make this whole process a lot easier, but here at Junkie Garage, we do with what we have. So that's what I have is jack stands underneath, supporting the rig on both sides. Took it up as high as I could. Problem is my driveway's slanted, so it creates a little bit more of an issue. But all in all, I was able to drop this down nicely. And I was checking everything to make sure that none of the wires and stuff like that were going to pull off when it articulated all the way down the way it did. But this side came out a lot easier than the other side. I didn't even have to use a compressor to get the spring out. I am going to try to do it without the compressor, getting the spring in. It's a bit tight. If I do, I don't have to compress it much to get it to fit and seat in. The main thing is up on the top here. Hopefully you can see that. Up on the top, there's a boot. And that boot area, there's a rubber boot that seats in. And what you end up having to do is you have to sit the shock in. And I'll kind of show you real quick over here. So here's the boot that I was talking about, and it's a rubber boot, and the shock sits in there, and then that goes into the coil setup. So all in all, that's pretty much what you got to do to put it back in. So I'm going to slap it together. As you can see, I measured out the shocks, and let me pan down. Sorry, I'm using this Osmo. Okay, so the new shocks, here's the old ones. I measured it out, and the new shocks themselves are 1 inch longer than the previous shocks, the Bilstein shocks that come stock. So I'll get an extra 1 inch of travel, which will be nice. Compression will be a lot better. Supposedly it's supposed to give me like 30% compression better, a little softer ride. But these springs, as you can see, they're quite a bit heftier than the standard Power Wagon springs, which are these. So they're a lot thicker. There's 10 coils total on that spring for the THUREN. There's only 8 on the stock. So that kind of gives you an extra, an idea of how much bigger these springs are compared to the old stock ones. It's supposed to give me an additional, I think it's supposed to set it up to about 3 inches, which will level it. And then the back springs are supposed to be 1 inch or something, so that everything is true and level, but it's supposed to get a smoother ride. So we'll see. But I'm going to go ahead and put this thing back together on the front end. And then when I do the back end, I'll go ahead and video that as well. Probably get to that a little bit later on this week. All right, thanks for watching. Wagon on, and I'll have more to come. Thank you. All right, Wagon Junkies, before I move on to putting the tires on and everything else, just kind of want to go through a few of the core things that I've done up to this point. So basically, jack the truck up and put it up on jack stands, which are down there on both sides. Prior to doing that, all wheels are chalked in the back. So if I show you back here what I've done, I've got a big wheel chalk back here, and then I've got additional chalks back here, and this is to ensure that the vehicle's not going to move anywhere. Once I jacked it up, then I took the tires off of the vehicle and then slowly lowered the jack. And when you do that, and let me back up a second. So you want to make sure that you put the vehicle in four high and hit your detachable sways. Make sure it activates before you even start this process. The reason for that is so it'll articulate low enough so that you can pull out the springs. So I apologize for that. So then jacked it up, lowered, put it on the jack stands, lowered everything. As you can see, still not, I mean, you would want it a lot higher than this, but it did articulate all the way down. The other thing you want to keep in mind, excuse me, when you have it fully articulated, you're going to have a situation where these go real tight. So you want to make sure that there's not too much stress on those, and be very careful of that, because that's your whole system right there. So you got to be careful when you lower it. Make sure it's not too tight. That's pretty tight. That's actually tighter than I want to, but I had to get this as low as possible so that I could get the coil springs in and out, or out and in. Then put in the new system, tighten everything up real tight, and as you can see, it's real, there's not a lot of clearance for you to get that shock in place and everything else. I'm now at the situation to where I'm going to jack everything up. I'm going to go ahead and bolt in shocks on both sides, the base portion of them. And then from there, once that's done, then I'll jack it up on each side, put the tires on. Everything should be good to go for the front end system itself. All right. I do apologize for all the quick clips, even the one at night. But as I said, we've been getting a lot of weather moving through, so my time's been kind of limited as I'm going through this process. It's good to have a second pair of hands to help you with this. Pretty much doing this on my own. My son, the giant, has jumped in here and there, but it's an easier process, all in all, if you have a second set of hands to kind of help you out with this. Plus, I have a bad back, so that doesn't help the situation much with all the crawling around I've had to do. But I hope this helps you. Once I do the back end, I'll also post those videos as well. All right, but thanks for joining. And until then, wagon on. Okay, so I'm back. So, got the front end all in, all done. As you can see, there's lots more clearance. As a matter of fact, back here, a lot of clearance. I'm no longer having issues on full lock where anything is rubbing, including the control arms or the sway. And she sits nice. So it took me some time to get it fully completed and everything else. I've had a lot going on in my schedule, so I've been working it off and on. There were some trial and error moments all throughout this. One of them was one of my shocks had a bad thread on it, so I had to re-thread it. That took some time, and one of the wheels, the left-hand side, the rotor dropped way down because of the full articulation, which you have to prepare for. So you got to really jack this thing up high. And then I threw my back out. So combination of things. So what are we doing today? Today we're going to finish up this install and do the rear end. And with the rear end, I already have the full package already established and stuff. I'll video that in a second. But with the rear end, what I'm going to have to do, I need access into this shock area. And the only way to get into it is I got to take out this fender well. There's a couple of bolts, one here, one over here, and then I think it's going to overlap with these bolts that are in this flashing or fairing area or whatever you want to call it. Like I said, I'm not real technical. I can take stuff apart and put it back together. So that's going to have to come out. Shock's going to have to be unbolted from the top. And then some other key things that you want to keep in mind. So I don't know if this is common, and let me see if I can get to it from here. But right in there is a shock that's attached to your differential. You want to make sure that you remove that. It's to help with the bouncing on highways and everything else, to help smooth this ride out a little bit more. So you need to remove that. Along with it, you need to detach your sway that's in the back, and that'll cause everything to drop the way that you need to so that you can get your new coils in. Okay, and as you can see, the shocks, they're kind of tucked up and they go up into a hole within the frame and they get bolted up top. So there's kind of a lot to this install. But it's supposedly 10 times easier. One of the key things that I'm doing, and it's up to you guys whether you do this or not, is I'm removing this sway. So the sway bar itself, I don't need it. Primarily when I'm off-roading and everything else, I want more articulation, a little bit more flex. Removing this gives you that additional flex that you need so that you're not pulling up on three wheels and some of the dips and everything else that you're going to encounter. I do a lot of off-road, and so I notice these things. And I'm not too worried about removing it because you do have a track bar already located in the rear end, which I was surprised to find. I thought I was going to have to get one. So all in all, that's what the install is going to entail. So you're going to jack it up by your differential as high as possible. Put your jack stands underneath each side. Lower it down. Of course, remove the tires. And then from there, once you have everything unbolted, you're going to go ahead and lower your jack until it drops. I'm going to go ahead and unbolt the sways and the shock ahead of time. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and do everything else as far as jacking it up and stuff. Okay? Talk to you in a bit. Okay guys, so one of the first things that I started doing is removing the bolts in the fender well all the way around, as you can see. And the main reason why, and I removed the two that were up here, those two, so that I can pull it up enough so I can get access to that shock. You don't have to remove the plastic all the way out, but what it does is it allows you to pull the plastic up so that you can tuck it in here into the wheel well so that you can actually get to the shock, because that's going to be crucial for the removal and the install of it. Aside from that, I don't know about you, but I don't like plastic. And they had a plastic little mud flap thing that came off the back here. They had other additional plastic within the wheel wells. I'm removing this plastic in front of the tire as well, because I am going to put sliders on, and that's one of the requirements. You're going to have to remove it anyway. But the problem with the plastic, even with these fenders, is, and you probably can't see it, but it catches all this dirt and cakes all inside. So I'm really trying to, as I move through this project, taking my time, but I may end up actually removing these fender flares because I'm sure it's just packed solid with mud and crap and everything else. Plus, I like the sleek look of the body itself. It does give it a more aggressive look with these fender flares, but eventually what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to get the AEV fender flares down the line once they make it for the 19s. And that way I can run bigger tires in the future. Okay? Okay guys, so I removed the bolt off of that shock up there by tucking this fender in and everything else. Let me show you what happens though. Usually on Junkie Garage, nothing goes as planned. So on this side, I actually had to remove the entire liner out of it because it just was not, it wasn't moving up far enough for me to get to that shock so that I could remove the bolt. It wasn't a major issue. It actually just slides right out. You just push in it a little bit. But yeah, so next what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna go ahead and loosen my lugs, raise it, jack it up, take the tires off, put it on jack stands, have everything drop, and hopefully it goes as planned. I'm not expecting it to because nothing with this has gone as planned. Lots of cussing and moments of just defeat, but I'll get through it as I always do. Anyway, wanted to show you guys too, if you guys are running the methods, what ends up happening with the methods when you're off-roading at times, you'll end up catching these because they come out farther than the wheel, these caps. And as you can see, I cracked it. Don't tell my wife. These were brand new rims and I've gouged them pretty good on my last Calico trip, which I'm going to send a video on or have multiple videos on. It was a great trip, but it was a hard run. And I have an extra one that was with my spare, so I'm just going to replace this once I take the tire off. It's no big deal. And then from Method, I'm going to ask them if there's some sort of paint that I can get for these because I don't want them to rust up. But aside from that, these have been great wheels, great rims. I love the whole tire package itself. So yeah. All right, let me get back to this install. The other thing too with these installs I wanted to mention, you want to make sure there's a lot of brake lines and other things that are attached that as you start dropping everything, you just want to make sure that nothing's getting snagged because you run the risk of, you know, puncturing, tearing a hose line or something else. You just take your time with this. It's not something you can really rush. It'd be great if for this overall process, so there's some lines right there. It'd be great for this overall process if you had access to an actual hydraulic jack that you could put the whole truck up on. Makes things a lot easier. Unlike me, I'm crunching around underneath this thing and screwing up my back more. But all right guys, so I'm gonna get back to this. I'll brief you shortly. Thanks. Okay guys, so I removed the spring and the shock out of the location. I don't know why they said that this would be easier doing the back afterwards. It was easy for the most part eventually getting the springs out. You don't have to compress them or anything like that. The hard part, I'm 6'3", and let me see if I can get this to work right. Alright, as I was saying, I'm 6'3". I got to get the coil in there, seated into that hole there, and then it's got to seat down into this lower area. Where is it? Down in here. The problem is there's not a lot of clearance in here, so I'm gonna use my compressor. I'm gonna bring the springs down, compress it, and then pop it back up. But yeah, everything for the most part's been disconnected. Axle's been dropped. Sorry. I am gonna get a GoPro because I'm tired of having to adjust this Osmo. It's a great gimbal camera for inside the cab, but that's about it. But aside from that, yeah, I got the shock removed, disconnected that shock, disconnected my sway bar, disconnected everything that needs to be disconnected. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to get the spring in and not get overly frustrated. So more to come. All right, stay tuned. One more thing, guys, you can kind of see the difference in size between the original stock and the new THUREN. THUREN is a little bit thicker, but it's also longer. So it should give me an additional probably 1.5 inches, 2 inches in the back. With a 3-inch lift in the front, everything should be level. So, bye. Alright guys, so one issue that I came across is on the passenger side in the rear. You don't have the kind of clearance that you have on the driver's side because they put the bracing in right here for the track bar. So it causes a little bit of an issue trying to get your spring in, get everything to seat properly. So what I ended up doing is I removed the bump stop, and it was originally basically bolted up in here. So I undid it thanks to my impact gun, and I'm going to try that method to see if that makes things a little bit easier as far as clearance so that I can get the spring through there. There's not enough room otherwise to try to contort your body to try to get that spring in. So more to come. Okay guys, so I got the passenger side all on intact. I did put the bump stop back in, as you can see, but the shock's seated in, shock springs seated in. I'm a little tired. One thing, when you go to mount your shock in here, you'll find that the rubber, if you're using a THUREN kit, the rubber seems to extend out quite a bit, and it's hard to get it to seat in properly. So what I did was I sprayed it with some WD-40, both on the rubber and also on the inside, and it slid right in, and then, you know, ran it all the way up through the top there. So yeah, I mean, all in all, I'm happy with this. I wanted to kind of show you this, running out of daylight, but I'm going to throw the tires on it and everything else, and then I'll show you the reveal first thing tomorrow so you guys can see everything completed. And aside from that, if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Send me an email if you want to. And if you haven't subscribed and you'd like to subscribe, please subscribe. Those of you that have subscribed, thank you for subscribing. And please share. I do stuff like this all the time. I've had this wagon not even a year, and I've done all these modifications on it throughout, and I try to post them as I go. It's a little tough at times to remember, oh yeah, I got to shoot some video. I'm still learning at this. I'm not the best editor, nor am I the best filmmaker, but I'm trying to give you guys some insight, so if you decide to do this stuff on your own, you can see how to do it. It does take time. It does get frustrating at times, but if you want to save your guys selves a couple of $1,000s for having kits installed on your vehicles, as I go through and make more modifications, I'll do updates on those as well. So this is a 3-inch THUREN overland system, and so far, you know, the front I've been really impressed with. I've been driving it around for about 4 days now, and it really absorbs a lot. I'm waiting to see how the whole package rides, but I'll give you guys updates as I go along. I'm going to be doing my Carly track bar for the front. That'll be coming up shortly. It's an adjustable track bar as well, so I'll be learning on that one as we go along. But again, thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you. Okay, so if you end up doing some sort of a suspension install on your own and you have a Power Wagon, you're going to come across this problem. So you have to actually disconnect. It's a fifth shock. It's a ride hopper installation, basically. It keeps your axle and driveline aligned as it's going down the road. It keeps you from having what they call axle warp. So anyway, here on Junkie Garage, we have to make do with what we have. So the compression on this is ridiculous. So what I had to do was take a tie strap, like a come along ratchet setup, and actually torque it down so that I can compress the shock enough to fit it back into its alignment of the hole. And then from there I'll undo the strap, and that's it. And the job is complete. It's been a bear, but very, very interesting learning process throughout this. I learned a lot. So I'll show you the final results of everything. Alright guys, so the install's done. Did both the front and back. It was a THUREN 3-inch overland system. And I'm very impressed. I took it just for a short little joyride around the neighborhood. We're kind of in lockdown mode, as everyone else is for the most part, but super smooth. So once we're able to travel in the trails again, I'll give a full thorough review of what I think about the overall suspension package, but so far I'm very happy with it. As you can see, I'm running 37s, and these tires do not seem big enough now. So it was well worth it doing this overall package. So it looks like the truck is pretty much level now, all in all. And yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised with everything. So thanks for watching my video. I hope I was able to give you some useful tips. If you shoot me some comments, emails, whatever, if you're doing the same particular type of kit and everything else, I'll give you guys some additional pointers. But for the most part, this thing is really awesome, and I can't wait to try it out on the trails. Alright, till next time, wagon on.